What if transformation isn't just about who we are becoming, but also how we actually get our brains to learn and to believe it? My last episode, I shared how a paradigm shift rewired my sense of identity. I called it the rebirth moment that required new language and new peers, and not at least daily practice to protect the emerging future version of myself. Today, we continue this journey with my guest, Liz Guthridge, leadership navigator, brain friendly thinking partner, and neuroplastician. Liz helps leaders rewire the habits, beliefs, and mental models that keep them locked in old identities, old ceilings, and the management age thinking mindset. If transformation demands new thinking, Liz helps us build the neural pathways to sustain it. In this conversation, we explore how leaders can travel through tricky terrain with clarity, confidence, and inner alignment. And not at least how peers help us accelerate that process. Liz, welcome to the Alt Journey podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it is an honor to have this conversation with us after running for a while in the Alt dialogue. And I'm really curious about your perspective about what I shared. So, what stood out in the podcast of last week?
So, certainly what stood out was you're talking about this identity change. And what also struck out is the concept that I've been kind of protesting against for a while, but I'm really having to accept because it makes a lot of sense. And I think the age we're living in is to really be practicing metacognition a lot. And my protest is against the term because it sounds so clinical and so serious, but it's basically thinking about thinking.
Mm.
And it's really helpful to do because if you want to transform, you need to be thinking about how you think about things, not just about thinking about what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And although I wasn't conscious about that, I have been involved for decades in the way of thinking when we talk about vision and strategy. But this demanded me to rethink how I was thinking myself, especially, and it was introduced by that paradigm shift that I couldn't explain to myself, but there was something I sensed that I was invited to start thinking differently about who I am becoming, and I needed to find the language to express it. It
Mm-hmm.
was like I said yes to a quest that wasn't defined yet, or at least it wasn't clear what the quest was.
Did you get any sense of a sense of freedom that you have to kind of break through and think about things and do things differently?
Absolutely, absolutely, because yeah, it was both friction and freedom. The freedom was that I was open and interested for things that I never considered to be mine to think about. So, different perspectives of social constructs, geopolitics, topics that were always on the side of the vision and the strategy work, but that were more like these are the circumstances. And now I felt intrigued and triggered to learn more of things, like you said, that I was opposing to. So I had my point of view, and now I wanted to not only know the other one's point of views, but also see it from their point of views. And that was more like a fascinating thing because getting there opened my eyes and I started to see something new. So it was not that, oh, I want to see ABC. No, I just wanted to see, and that opened the world. And that is actually where both the friction and the freedom was, because
Mm-hmm.
there was this, I would nearly say, competition of perspectives is what I know, that I understand, but always has been leading. Is this the strongest one? Should I give it up? Should I defend it? That's on one hand, and on the other hand, this freedom of I can learn more. I can probably find an opportunity in it. It's adventurous, it's unknown, but it's already attractive from the start, if that makes sense, because
Oh,
it's
sure,
really
sure.
abstract.
Yeah. Because I think this idea of having both the freedom and the friction is very normal. And what can be very helpful is to say both of them exist, and sometimes simultaneously, although the one may be pulling a bit stronger than the other at times, but also to think about the ability to reframe.
Mm.
Because if you can look at things in a different point of view, that can be so very powerful. And this idea that you are able to see the freedom and what that freedom is going to provide you. And that can be really, really valuable. So, for example, I've been talking to people lately about how uncertainty can be really terrifying to people. Yet, if you can reframe uncertainty as an opportunity to think about things in a different way and what that might bring to you, that can also give you a sense of freedom and give you some great ideas.
Absolutely. Taking something that is given and challenge actually that it is given. So what if this is not happening to me, but if it's happening for me, which is one that we use nowadays a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But that small shift of lenses is day and night.
Yes. And especially if you, for example, a lot of people will have trouble reframing on their own. Um, and so one of the ways that I often talk about it is look at it as a game. What's the different lens I can use, or what's the different angle I can use? How can I think about this differently? And then even if that's tough, think about, okay, how can I look at it from a really positive perspective? Because that brain really likes the positivity, because that gives you a hit of dopamine, which is a reward for thinking about things in different ways.
That's an interesting point, because I think there will be a lot of people out there who will immediately think, well, wait a minute, isn't the brain negative because it tries to protect us from fear and danger? But it's really addictive to dopamine, which you can accelerate by the positive.
Right, because the brain does like, even though the brain tries to protect us, it does like novelty. So if the novelty is something that can be positive, that starts to ignite your reward system and you get the dopamine, that feel good.
Yeah. What I also learned in this phase is that my default thinking, and probably it is shaped that way through society and education, is that I always make the choice between two entities: what I know and don't know, black and white, um, positive, negative. And it didn't help me, because I was biased for one, and now I was trying to find really strong arguments for the opposite thought perspective, but actually that was destructive for what I was biased for. So in a way that created more friction than freedom.
Right, right. And that, which is again very normal, because our brain, besides wanting to keep us safe, wants to take the easy way out. And comparing two things is easy.
Yeah.
And there's so much history about it: good versus evil, little versus big. I mean, all sorts of these things. So what I started to do a number of years ago, and I tried it for a while before I started encouraging for others, is to avoid that problem. Think about it. Can you think of three things to consider?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
or maybe even more, but don't go more than 5, because then your brain gets overwhelmed. But if you add a third element, it can make a huge difference, because you can look at each one of the 3 more thoroughly and systematically than you could going from back and forth between good and bad, let's say.
Well, I agree on that one. Finding the third option, I made it a habit in every choice. What is the third option? And actually, it's very old wisdom. When you draw a Venn diagram, as we call it nowadays,
Mm-hmm.
you have 3 circles. When they overlap, out of the 3 options, you have 7 spaces. And the middle one is the interesting one, because you are building up, stacking up, you're climbing actually in your thinking to go from what's the overlap between the different options in sets of 2 to what's happening in the center of all the options. And that is a, although it sounds like a really silly trick, just add the third engine and option and find where they overlap, you get to a level of thinking where the paradox, I would nearly say not solved, but the paradox disappears, because you start to see how contradicting elements with all their different positive benefits now can be culminated to one set of options where you don't have the negatives. And it is very close to what we tend to say, don't throw away the child with the bathwater. Well, that's what we do if we have 2 options, because then we are only focused on the positives of one and we ignore the negatives of the other. But we throw the bathwater away with the other option where the positives go away. And in that, with working with 3 options, there is a moment it clicks and your thinking connects all the positives to something you have never seen before, never heard before, but you sensed it all the time that it was possible. And now the challenge is, can I put it to words? Can I
Right. And
articulate
then
it?
that click, that is a reward for your brain, because you've been able to look at things a different way and get a better solution. And so that gives you a hit of dopamine too. It's a reward.
Absolutely. On the introduction of today's podcast, I mentioned that it's a challenge to figure out who you are becoming, because it can be the opposite of who you understand you are today. And actually, that is because I have a strong belief of who I am. And to be honest, what who I believe I am is more yesterday's version of me. Who I am should be today's version of me. But what I focus on is who I'm becoming, the unfolding of the full of, or and at best the fullest version of me. But my belief system tends to promote the previous version, the the pre-updated version, without the bug fixes, without the revelation, without the unfolding. So how do I work on that? Because that is really, I think, something of neural pathways. So how can I unlearn myself? And is it really necessary to put effort in the unlearning?
It's again how you frame things. So I think if we as humans go back to nature and think that we are more like nature than we are from the age of engineering, because I think for too long, especially in business, people used metaphors that were building metaphors like foundations and pillars and posts and all these things that are very concrete, literally,
Yeah,
and
I
hard to
agree.
change. If, however, we view ourselves more as a tree with deep roots And every now and, every season we're going to shed some leaves and then have it a sense of a rebirth. That is a better analogy for what we're doing. Does that make sense to you?
That makes sense. Just have to ponder about that. So, because we use metaphors that are literally concrete, physical representations of a concept, a design, placed in a context, but we talk about buildings, foundations, pillars, structures that are rigid by nature, we don't help ourselves. And we will be stuck because actually how you describe it it will be a place of living, but soon it will be the prison.
Right. It's like a house, which you're not going to remodel every year. However, the garden, you're going to prune and change, add new plants, take some out, but again, prune. And that is constantly living and evolving. And you're going to take if you take a picture in 1st of December, it's going to look different 1st of March, 1st of July, so that you're still going to see resemblances of what it had been before, yet it's still evolving and changing.
I like that perspective, that image of the garden, because although there will be fall and it will turn in winter, it's a different fall and a different winter than it was last time. So there is a pattern in that the seasons come and go, but it's not a repetition. It's always new. It's always evolving. There's always time for sowing, growing, cultivating, and harvesting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's never the same. So it's never boring. Although we got so much into maintaining the building that we want to make a predictable, repetitive task. And then we say it's the foundation for growth. But it's like the growth in the concrete versus the hard work, never boring in the garden.
Yeah. With fruits of your labor, because the garden produces vegetables and fruits and things like that. And if you don't like the garden metaphor, you could use water, an ocean, a stream. You can use a forest. So and I think it's important to remember, I mean, we humans construct so much of the environment in which we live in, including our metaphors. So that's why it really is valuable to take time to think what metaphors are important for you.
Yeah. And for our listeners, like metaphors are actually our mental models, our mental
Mm-hmm.
constructs. And if we make our mental constructs so rigid, then it becomes really hard to challenge our own thinking, and grow and learn in our thinking. If we take a more organic example, like ocean, river, flow, you immediately have, there is momentum in it. Even in the garden, there is momentum. And it sounds silly. The building only has momentum during an earthquake. So, and momentum, I think, is so important to protect the freedom of thinking, learning, evolving, finding the language. It's like I would nearly say, but that's a construct again. How easy it is and how hard it is at the same time
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
think of
Right.
something we didn't engineer.
Yes. And there are ways you can play with it as well. I mean, I used to beat myself up at times because I really like to learn a little bit about a lot of things. And so I think so I'm more of a generalist. And then I start to think about, okay, all the bees and the butterflies who kind of flit around the gardens. Is that so awful?
Yeah.
And especially in this era now of easy access to so much knowledge, if need be, I can always look something up to get more depth.
And rather be without the swimming lanes, just go create our own lane, organic route, find our own way to climb our mountain.
Right. And I think that plays into this, concept you had about the unlearning, is that if you do find yourself thinking more of like you are a butterfly or a bee or something that's moving around much more than going deep, is to just be asking yourself, does this still make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, I had an example of it this morning. I was thinking, okay, the first of the year is coming up. I generally have a focal word. I've been doing this the past few years, a focal word for the year. What is my focal word going to be? And two words popped into my brain. And I said, oh, I have to choose. Then I said, well, can't I have two focal words this year? Why not? I don't know for sure I'm going to do that, but I may.
Find the third one.
I should. I practice what I preach. I should find a third one.
Exactly. And then the word will be born out of those three. Yeah.
Good point. I'll make a note to myself to do that. That's a very good idea. Thank you.
Actually, I think that's a really practical mental tool that evolved out of this journey of finding out who am I becoming, what's my authentic self, and how do I lead myself and how do I lead others. The tool is not go for one option, don't choose between two options, but find three options. So the new thing is actually born amidst of those three options. And it's actually liberating, but it is intentional, and you have to be conscious in that process, because else it will be the default, it will be the old habit, it will be the old neural pathways that I've worked so many times that I always fall back. But you don't want to fall back, you want to reach the next threshold,
Mm-hmm.
that is the escape when you fall back in the next phase of life. And I think for leadership, this is so important, self leadership, because else our threshold is survival mode. Our
Right.
default
Right.
is survival mode, and we see it all around us. Then there is lack. We need to win at the expense of someone else. So if we don't want that, we have to make sure that we reach a next threshold that is our next fallback scenario, and it should not be survival mode.
Yes. And I think also what we're doing right now is so very valuable because we're getting this stuff out of our heads, we're verbalizing it. And by talking it through, I mean, for example, here I totally didn't even think about this idea of a third word, but but you picked up on it because of our earlier conversation and have challenged me, and that's really valuable.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I
The
keep thinking about, there's a woman, I think Samara Bay is her name, who talks. She's a great book, Permission to Speak, and her comment is, which I just adore, is like, don't feel that you have to be precise when you speak at times, because you're birthing words, you're birthing concepts, and everybody loves new babies. So this idea that if you frame it that way to yourself, you can get an idea out and then kind of massage it to make it work.
and that's part of the freedom. The part of the freedom is that you're willing to take a risk. So you recognize something is emerging, and you start to identify what opportunity is, and then you have to step up. And if we don't do that, if we are afraid to be vulnerable, and we can only be vulnerable when we feel ourselves safe. So before we know, we get all the buzzwords out, but they're all part of the framework of the freedom that we step in, and finding the words and experimenting with the words. That in my own journey, that's where I made the most mistakes.
Hmm.
I settled too soon for the words because the people around me got really tired of me experimenting with another set of new language. I also pushed my relationships to the max, and some didn't survive it. Um, but I found out I can't hold back, and I got new connections. I found new peers through that journey of finding language and making mistakes. I also met new people. I meet people that are also on the journey of I need to put it to words. I need to express myself. I need to hear what I think because it really reveals something of what I'm thinking. And now it becomes, in a way, contextual and it's no longer just in my head. I meet new people, I attract new people that are on a similar journey. And with their pushback, their feedback, I went on to find more clarity because it's so easy to just say, well, these are the new words, I'm done for today. But when you have peer feedback, you think, that's not what I wanted to say. This is just the start. So you get a very organic, natural way of keep climbing and growing in who you are becoming. But also, you also have the mourning and the grief that long-term peers, friends, travel companions camp out and say, well, this is how far my journey goes with you. So
Yeah.
it creates forks in the road.
Right. Now, have you discovered that the new people you're meeting with and working with are very different than the former ones?
Yeah, they value other things. They value freedom above, I would nearly say, um, predictability, certainty. They they need people that see and hear them. In they don't really like the celebration of people. They say I need more than just be celebrated. I need to be feel seen and heard. We borrow each other's language. So there is it, it's a cognitive, emotional, spiritual. So the whole package. It's triggered. It's motivating. It's inspiring, and that is different than the people that you. I'm sorry for the language, but you leave behind because
Well, right. Although you could frame it, say you're moving in a different direction.
exactly, and that was the painful conclusion. With hindsight, it's good to release each other.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things we humans really need other humans. This so much of the research is showing that our longevity, our health, our happiness depends on having connections to other human beings more so than the quality of our health or exercise or even financial fitness. It's that social fitness that's really really key. And so it's important to then to spend some time thinking about what's meaningful to you and to each of us in that. I mean, some people do enjoy people who are more like them. Others of us enjoy people who are different, who will challenge us. Or they may be very, like I have a friend who's quite a few years younger than I am. She's in her early 30s. And we laugh because we've met through an individual who is very difficult to work with. However, we always want to stay in touch with him because we meet such interesting people through him. And we were talking the other day about that. But we were just testing some ideas with one another. And it was really helpful for me because she's having some of the same challenges that I am in terms of people just want to do same old, same old. And it's like, again, it's the human constructed this. Why can't we change it?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we have to be clear. We have to create concrete constructs to sustain our growth. But it's not just camp out. It is that base camp that which is our new starting port for the next exploration. And in the new base camp are different people.
Mm-hmm.
Because
And we can change base camps too.
yes, and if you climb your mountain, if you talk about personal growth, then you go from base camp to base camp, from maturity to maturity, and that's what I've learned. Everyone has the right for their own process called life, but also their own speed, and that's where the rough edge is. That means that people can change their speed and progress along the ride together, and then you have to make a choice. If you do a marathon and run together with someone, and someone has cramp, you can be really friendly and socially acceptable to stay with that person behind, but that will make that you won't get to the end either. So there is something of your own health, your own pace, and the freedom to change it on your own. And then you meet different people. And I think it's just life. And in a way, we have overrated that we should protect the relationships by staying together. I think we protect the health of the relationships by releasing each other and giving each other the freedom to just experiment something on our own. And in organizations where we have these contract-based commitment, that is a tough one.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think it's a tough one. And let's set that aside for a second. I think more in our personal relationships, I think one of the advantages of today's world is that it's easier to stay in touch with a lot more people, maybe not necessarily getting together once a week to do something, but once a year, or just having quick, Zoom call or get together or something like that, so that you can keep that connection to them and to what you enjoy about them and what they bring out in you, which is still really can be really valuable. The work situation can be a little bit more challenging.
Yeah. And it has changed because a few generations back, there were so many jobs for life. And now we have already known, like, it's good to sometimes just switch jobs. And it is
Well,
jumping
even
on another train.
right. And even if you stay in one organization these days, there's so much more project work than there ever was before. So
Absolutely.
that you can be on multiple projects or segue from different projects and be working with different people. I mean, that has its own separate challenges because you've got to be much more explicit about your working relationships with others, because you have to, expression often goes hit the ground running as soon as possible, yet it does give you that variety.
Yeah. So just to bring it to a point we can land our conversation, it's really important that we know who we are becoming, but also who we have around us. We can't take that for granted. We have to be really careful, nurturing to who is around us. What's another takeaway from our
Yeah, I think that's a great, again, back to the kind of the garden imagery, the nurturing. Um, and at the same time, we want to make sure that the people around us are not going to hold us back so much, or cut all off all the new growth, and instead inspire us and encourage us, to push us more.
Well, immediately I have the image of gardening myself. When you plant something new, then the first season it looks amazing, and then second season you find, oh, there needs to be more space in between. So you have to to create space between what you have sown and for it to grow another season. That means that you have to cut out some or replant it somewhere else, and then the proximity is different. So I think the proximity needs to be aligned with our growth, our stage of growth. What's another thing? I think the unlearning.
Yeah, and I think the unlearning, I keep coming back to, I don't know how explicit it needs to be, like, I'm going to unlearn that, but instead, I'm going to look at this differently, and this is what I'm going to do instead. Because you may still come back to something. I mean, I can't come up with a good example immediately, but it's back to kind of pruning.
Yeah. Well, and what we said with the three options, like I don't have to unlearn my default option, but I could think of the opposite one and I could think of a third one. And now what I have learned in the past is still an element of what I'm going to learn next.
Mm-hmm.
But by keeping or challenging myself not to settle for the default, not to be in the bias for one or the other, but go for the third option and then have the real option birthed in the midst of it. I think that is really what helped me processing the new, the adventure that I got invited to by this deep self-awareness that actually my identity can be so much more. It's already inside of me, but I need to be intentional to unfold it.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think the other thing too is to make sure that you're very much aware that you can have unlimited thoughts. And if you get stuck, we now have AI that we can prime and get some more ideas. And so it's not limited.
No, we are not limited. Yeah. So I think that's the big takeaway. If we sense we are limited, tell ourselves we're not limited. And we have tools to turn our perspectives, to not look at the brick wall, but just turn a little bit to the left or the right and we see there is sunshine. There is an invitation to step up. Well, I want to thank all our listeners to stay tuned with us to the end. And like always, I forgot to invite you halfway to appreciate the conversation if you do, or subscribe to the channel, or let us know what your thoughts are, because they're really important to us, what you are thinking, how you are processing this. And that's not only giving you the opportunity to express the insights with words, or even if you trust it to paper, but it helps us as well to be not staring in another single street. I also want to invite you for an exclusive peer dialogue with other visionary leaders to pioneer and ponder these authentic leadership transformation questions, like we've been doing today with Liz and myself. And just DM Future, and we will make sure you get the right information. You can always find us on LinkedIn. The LinkedIn links are and the websites are in the comments of this podcast. But I really want to encourage you as well. Take the next step. Find the new peers for the next phase of your journey, and get back into the gardening. Liz, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, you've been a wonderful thought partner today.
Thank you for your input, and we will continue the conversation.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.